Learn how leaders can use storytelling and social media to stand out in a crowded marketplace. Winning with Bill Harper, CEO of BrandBossHQ, on today's episode of the Executive Wins Podcast. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so you can get inspired and grow your business. Here's your host, Gordon Shepherd. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so that you can get inspired and grow your business. I'm your host, Gordon Shepherd. And to kick off the show, I want to talk about a transformational approach that I learned from Daniel Haight, president of Dark Horse Analytics, on episode 46. He said that he is building a workplace where his staff loves going to work on Mondays more than they like leaving the office on Fridays. Imagine a place where you love going to work on a Monday. No more lying awake on a Sunday night, dreading the fact that you have to go to work the next day. Which begs the question for all leaders: what steps can you take to build this type of work culture? Well, the first step that I would recommend is that you actually listen to episode 46 and learn about how Daniel is doing this. And then you can listen to all of the other leaders who have appeared on this show. And that's because they are sharing the roadmaps behind their biggest wins so that you can learn their lessons and apply them to make your business the type of place where Mondays are better than Fridays. I also want to remind you that the Executive Wins podcast won the Best New Podcast Award in the Quill Podcasting Awards in its first year of production. And thanks to you, the Executive Wins podcast has surpassed 34,000 views on YouTube and more than 18,000 minutes of watch time, along with having over 1,300 downloads on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen. Featuring mission-driven leaders sharing their biggest wins so that you can get inspired and grow your business. That's what you get on the Executive Wins Podcast. On today's episode, you'll learn how leaders can use storytelling and social media to stand out in a crowded marketplace. Winning with Bill Harper, the CEO of BrandBossHQ. I also want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by our new workshop called How Leaders Can Tell Winning Stories to Get Profitable Results. This workshop helps leaders learn how to tell highly effective stories so they can inspire their teams, build their organizations, and serve their customers at the highest possible level. In this hands-on workshop, leaders will learn a proven 5-step storytelling system called the Anatomy of a Win, so that they'll be able to articulate the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind every winning story they want to tell. They'll also learn how to dynamically use their voice and be confident storytellers no matter where they are, at the office, networking events, in the boardroom, or on stage. So if you and your leadership team really want to learn how to tell winning stories that make a big impact, then get in touch with me directly at gord@executivewins.com or visit executivewins.com/Executive Wins Storytelling Workshop to learn more. And now on to today's show. We are lucky to be joined by Bill Harper, CEO of BrandBossHQ, a high-impact marketing company that teaches leaders about the stories they need to tell to scale their companies. You can learn about their work at BrandBossHQ.com. That's BrandBossHQ.com. On this episode, you'll learn about Bill's success on TikTok and how it has helped his company to go global. You'll also hear about why he was initially resistant and the steps that he took to get his first viral video that got over 1 million views. You'll also learn from Bill about how to strategically build your brand and why mini mentorship and giving without expecting anything in return is essential. This episode is a masterclass in overcoming internal objections, how to be successful on social media, and the importance of focusing on the one thing to help your brand cut through the noise. I also want to remind you that this interview follows a specific format that I created called The Anatomy of a Win to help you learn the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind every business win that you hear on this show. I really do hope that you can use this approach to reach your next business milestone. And now here's Bill Harper with his executive win. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you so very much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Well, I got so lucky because as sort of a surfer of TikTok, where I'm looking for things to come into my world, you came into my world with clear messaging that really kind of kicked me in the butt without even meeting you about what I needed to think about around branding and those types of things. So there you were doing your thing. And that was a sort of a big reason to reach out to you. And then getting a chance to pre-interview, learn a little bit about some of your deep history in this area was super valuable. And so I know this is going to be a wonderful podcast where you're going to share one of your biggest wins, but a lot of people haven't met you yet. And if you had to introduce yourself, what would you say?
So I'm Bill Harper. I'm the founder and chief creative officer at BrandBossHQ. And our big reason for being is teaching businesses the stories they need to tell so that they can scale.
Why is it so important for businesses to figure out the story they need to tell?
That is a phenomenal question. Almost every business suffers from what we refer to as better mousetrap mindset. And by that, I mean that they go and they create whatever it is that they do, sunglasses or financial services or bubble gum or sunscreen, whatever. And they're so wound up in the development of their products and services that they want to tell the world about that. And so they go out and they say, look at our glasses. Our glasses are the best glasses ever. And then the next company comes along and they say, look at our glasses. They're the best glasses ever. And then the next company comes along and says the same thing. And when you talk to them, they all answer the same question the same way. What makes you different and unique? And they say, Bill, it's our people and our products and our services and our customer service. And I say, no, it can't be that. And they say, what do you mean it can't be that? That's what makes us great. And I say, that might be what makes you great experientially. But that isn't what makes you great as a brand. And the thing about brand is that you must differentiate yourself or you become commodity. And for most business leaders, they're so heavily invested in the building of the mousetrap and the ideas behind the mousetrap that they simply can't see what it feels like to be their customer. And so they're like, if I just describe it, they'll see how great it is. Like it will just make itself so obvious that my product is better than everybody else's that they're going to leave all the other products behind and they're going to come buy my product. And if that was true, none of us would ever buy a product more than once because every time we walked down the street, we would suddenly be overwhelmed by this better pen that was sitting in a cup next to the other better pens. And we'd suddenly just be buying those pens. And then the next time we go out, the same thing would happen again. Unfortunately, that's not how we buy. We buy not the best brands, but the brands we like the best. And that little piece of truth that we buy emotionally as people and then justify our choices logically is widely lost by the public. So that little transition, which sounds so easy when you say it, is really, really hard for business leadership teams to do. And that's what I spend most of my time doing.
I love the tone of your voice. I think it's one of those things where there's something about whatever you've added up to this point to kind of get it. Like
Well,
you
thank
can
you.
see that your first meetings would be a blast. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in your first meetings with clients because I can hear you wouldn't be holding back. You would just be this way, and they're either going to be rolling with you to get the secret sauce for, if I read on your website about the case studies, a better haircut or whatever those moments are, because you
Yeah.
said they're in the middle of it, but there's something unique that you're doing. And I just mean to dig into your pedigree a little bit as we get to know you. What is it that got you to be able to have this assurity in your tone at this point? Like what led up to this moment in terms of how you
There
got
was
there?
certainly a lot of time when I wasn't, as I think everybody is. But what I realized along the path is a couple of things that are true. Number one, business leaders don't know what I know. And there aren't a lot of agency owners that know what I know anymore. Everybody has become so performance marketing centric and so tactically driven that strategy is missing. I had the tremendous compliment one time of working with somebody that had worked at Procter and Gamble, and he pulled me aside after we were working with him, and he said, "Bill, you could be making a $500,000 a year as a strategist over at P&G. Why do you want to run your own agency?" And I said, "Because I love this light bulb moment. When that happens, there's no better joy than watching a brand that's been beating themselves into a pulp trying to figure out how they could get their sales to work, and nothing's working, nothing's working, nothing's working. And then all of a sudden they get how to differentiate themselves, and sales comes into alignment, and product or service development comes into alignment, and they start getting excited again, and then things go. So part of it is just the enthusiasm of teaching people how this works so that they can benefit from it. Marketing isn't really a stranger. It's so foreign and unknown that people don't know how to take advantage of it. As to presentation and the rest of it, I guess after owning 5 agencies, I just got to a place where I was comfortable letting folks know that it's okay that you don't know this. The reason you hired me was to do something that you don't know. If I knew how to drill my own tooth, I'd never go to the dentist. I just sit at home and do it myself. But the truth is that I don't know. And those people don't. They're too busy making the world's best running shoe or bubble gum or shampoo or financial services, right? So they're off doing the thing that they know. They've hired me to shortcut their education process so that they can benefit from this faster. The easier I can make it for them to understand what it is that I'm trying to convey in a way that they can actually wrap their head around, the faster they benefit. And so I learned a long time ago that if I was a flower, on the wall, if I was a wallflower, I should have said it appropriate, then they would never listen. But if I was willing to take center stage, if I was willing to say, "Hey, by the way, I'm in the room because I know this, and you're paying me to be here because I know it," there's no sense wasting any time. What we should do instead is everybody just get excited about the fact that knowledge is about to change hands, and that we're going to get traction from that knowledge. So the sooner we're able to do that, the better. And I think that's really what fuels it. I'm not worried anymore because I'm not selling anything anymore, if that makes sense. At this point, I'm educating, I'm not selling, and I think that takes a lot of the sting out of that.
I love it. It's just thank you for 5 agencies and whatever, a family and all the things that you've had to put in there to get the chops to be able to be that confident in a room. But you can hear that it's money well spent when they've got you there, because while there be all that messiness in there, you're cutting through, you're going to help them get to that story. And you've done it over and over again in terms of the work that you've done. And that's a wonderful thing to have there. So thank you so much for giving us a good sense of who you are. I know things you don't, and you've got the confidence to say it so that when they get it, you go further. I can't even imagine the hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of revenue that you would have helped to motivate from just that very seed of being in the room and helping these brands across that you've done along the way. That's great. Well, it leads me to my first question in the interview, which is if you had to describe your biggest win in this body of work, what would that win be, and how would you describe it?
Honestly, the biggest win that I've had recently was one that I never expected, and that was the success that we had on TikTok. Well, I would normally not talk about something like that, except that I was so vehemently against being on the platform in the first place. And boy, am I glad that I was wrong. And was I ever wrong? And the gentleman, Tom, that was really pushing me to be on the platform, he kept coming to me month after month, and he would say, "You should be on TikTok. I think you'd really be good at it." And I'd just laugh and be like, "No, I don't belong on TikTok. No, 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 no." And what I really learned, I was so absolutely ignorant about the platform for its greater value, which is the mini mentorship that sits underneath the layer of popular garbage that sits on top. All the little silly videos of people falling down on ice, and bears chasing people across playgrounds, and like all the dumb stuff that, we think about when we think about social media in general. But the real beauty of the TikTok platform is the thing that I was totally unaware of at that moment, which is mini mentorship. Any subject that you want to learn about, there are 1,000 hours in 1 to 10 minute segments for it available online for free. It's literally the largest searchable how-to library on the face of the planet. And I just don't think people truly understand that. And that's why so many businesses fail so hard when it comes to their social media because they just don't get what they're supposed to do on it. So they show pictures of them at the holiday party, and they show pictures of their new product, and they show pretty backgrounds of things that match. And none of that stuff is important on those platforms. What's important on the platform is having a sense of learning and value or being entertained. And if you're really, really good, edutained, which is the bridge between entertainment and education, um, where you walk away feeling that was a few minutes well spent. I learned something a little different, and I see the world a little differently from it. And our success there in generating about 170,000 followers and multiple millions of dollars in net new business, all from the platform, was the biggest win and surprise for us because I was such a tremendous doubter. And I was convinced, absolutely convinced, that that would not work for a B2B marketing company. And I have repeatedly sent thank you notes to Tom about, thank you, thank you, thank you for convincing me to do this. Not only did it get me over my hurdles with being on social media and finding a way to make that voice heard and the rest of it, but it took us global. We have worked now with countries on almost every continent. I was invited this year alone to go speak at the Distillers Convention in Australia as the keynote speaker. I mean, none of this would have been possible without TikTok. And so who knew? And fortunately, some people that were smarter than me on the subject did, and I didn't. So I got to benefit from them.
How lucky that you've got some good people around you to take you in the right direction, even when you're pulling in the other direction, because you've led situations. You don't need to listen to these guys. You just keep going along the way you're going. And yet here you are at this moment of revelation. TikTok has influenced my golf swing. It's made me tell bad jokes. Do you know what I mean? Like there's all these things that I've gotten on there. And a lot of reason why I'm on TikTok originally, funny enough, because I was resistant to it as well, is my son is 24 and there's just stuff we can swap back and forth. It's how I want to stay engaged with him. But then it's led to meeting you and getting a great interview on the podcast and learning from you in ways that I just, in that same thing around, if we call it micro learning or what you said, that sort of short burst
mini mentorship,
has been
micro
influential.
mentorship.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I think it's been, and the other thing I'm seeing is you're showing up here today like I've met you on TikTok. TikTok is not a different person than I'm seeing. I'm seeing you here. I'm seeing you there. So whatever you've done to be on that platform and be your authentic self is coming across. So congratulations on making that happen too, because the way you're showing up obviously is working, and the proof is in the pudding for what you're doing there. So the win is the unexpected win from TikTok. You've invested in it, has led to a global opportunity, speaking opportunities, all kinds of things. That's great.
Yeah.
So I jump into what I call the anatomy of a win at this point and say, well, what's the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind the win? Strategically, vision, mission, values, goals, in a sense. You might have had a goal to expand your business or whatever that was. What would you say was a strategic highlight for making this win occur?
The beautiful thing about strategy is that it's the same for everything. Whether you're trying to do personal brand, meaning, hey, I'm an individual that wants to get recognized at work, to I'm a student that wants to get good recognition in a class, to I'm a person that wants to be a CEO of an organization. The structure is all the same. And the structure is, what is your one thing? The one thing that you bring to the table that everybody enjoys. Now, when I say one thing, what people tend to do is they tend to get scared and they say, well, but I can do a lot of things. I can do a lot of things. And when that happens, you inadvertently devalue yourself. And I'll give you two quick ways to think about this that people will remember. The first one is, if you want a great steak, you go to a steakhouse. You don't go to a buffet restaurant. Now, why? Why don't you go to a buffet restaurant? Well, because if you go to a buffet restaurant, you know that you're going to trade really good one thing for really mediocre lots of things. And so if as a business owner, I come out and I say, or as a personal brand or whatever, I come out and I say, well, I've got an answer for everybody. I can do this and I can do that and I can do this and I can do that. What happens is the person who's hearing you immediately begins devaluing each one of the things that you say that you can do, because much like a buffet, they assume, well, you're not really good at one thing. You kind of can do a whole bunch of stuff. And now I have to be careful about hiring you. So I think the first way to really kind of look at that is, let's make sure that we're being the steakhouse and not the buffet restaurant. But I think in a bigger sense, the value of it is in recognizing that you need to find your one thing. Oh, I'm sorry. The second way that I was going to tell you, the second way that people can think about that. If you think about the super successful brands of the world, each one of them has identified a single thing. And I'll use cars because they're really easy and people can wrap their head around it. So cars are, and I'm a car guy, so I hate saying this, but it's true. Cars are essentially commodity products because all you can do is get in them with you and your stuff and go from here to there and back. None of them does anything different. None of them flies or, baked Alaska or, whatever. They just drive from here to there and back again. But now try to imagine, a Porsche owner selling a Porsche to a Prius or vice versa, right? Like, good luck. The value system is wrong. If you take a look at car brands, they're excellent at having eked out a story territory. If you want a safe car, you buy a Volvo. If you want a luxurious car, you buy a Mercedes. If you want to buy a sports car, you buy a Porsche. If you want to buy a sports car and you have a family, you buy a BMW. And if you want to save the world one gas tank at a time, you buy a Prius. Those are the stories around those different brands. And so the structure is the same for all of it, which is, if this problem exists and I am good at solving that problem, then this is my brand promise. We are Volvo. We only make cars for people who prize safety. We are Porsche. We only make cars for people who prize performance and fun and what have you. And so that's the same no matter what. And so even in this instance of being on TikTok, the fun was, how can you start by saying, what is the one problem I'm solving? People don't get enough out of marketing because they don't understand it, and so they misuse it, and then it doesn't give the results that they want, or they hire people that sound like they know what they're doing, but they don't have the education to make good use out of it. Okay, so if that's the problem, and if I'm good at simplifying explanations, then I can say, hey, my whole role here is to make sure that you understand marketing better so that you can make better use out of it. And therefore, ... So it makes it super easy once we have that big lantern idea, that one thing that we're doing. Well, then the stories that fall out of it are super easy. I don't have to worry about telling stories that don't relate to the thing I'm trying to educate people on. I just have to find more stories that are relevant to when they don't get it, or how they don't get it, or how does something work, or how did it fall apart and not work well. And as long as I continue to explain that, then they benefit. And then beyond that, it's just all the operational stuff, right? Like, how can you get so many videos made? Which channels should you be on? Which ones do people like you on? Instagram is not a particular fan of my kind of thing. I'm a little too explanatory for that particular channel, that they don't react to it the same way that other channels do. So it's like, you got to find which channels you're good at. You got to figure out where your audience is. And then it's operationally, how many videos can you do, and how do you get them edited well, and how do you distribute them evenly, and so forth and so on. But really, it's the fun of just putting the pieces in place and then executing and optimizing.
Love it. So you've got your one thing. You're very, very clear. You're able to sort of take your own medicine, in a sense, and be able to then go into this TikTok platform scenario strategically, because you've done the experiments in the different platforms. And this is the one that you wanted to enter in the way that you did enter, and it's paid off again in the way that you sort of noted at the beginning. So that's the strategy for this win on TikTok. Anytime we have a strategy, the second step is to look at sort of the work plan or the timeline. There was resistance leading up to a certain day or month or something when you pulled the trigger. Then how long, when you pulled the trigger to be on TikTok, did it take to sort of get on TikTok and be successful at it? Was it a year, 2 years? When did that start?
Well, the funny thing is that I really had no idea what success meant. I remember the first time that I had a viral that went quote unquote, or I'm sorry, a video that went quote unquote viral, and I didn't even recognize that I was supposed to be excited about that. Like, I had no idea that that was a big deal. I had no, like, it just was so far out of my realm, because what we were doing was television campaigns and radio campaigns and outdoor and print and guerrilla stuff. Like, I just wasn't thinking about that. And so I went on, and, the first videos did what everybody's first videos did. 5 views, 10 views, whatever. The algorithm's figuring it out. But it didn't take long before suddenly there was 500 views, and then 1,500, and then 2,000. And so within the first year, we had 70 or 80,000 followers just within that first period of time. And I remember it was maybe 2 or 3 months, maybe not even that long, maybe 2 months in, that I had something that actually really went what I would consider viral, which is over 1,000,000 views. And I was watching it scale, and it was just taking off like a rock. I mean, like, every time I would refresh the screen, it was another, like, 1,000 people, and I was just watching this thing go, and I remember everybody on my team was sitting there watching over my shoulder going, "What are you?" Because I don't ever just sit, and I'm sitting and watching this thing, and I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me," and it just kept going and going and going. So, I don't I don't think it is the same for everybody. The thing that everybody needs to realize is that you just talk to what's true and right and real for you, that you can educate on, and your audience will eventually find you. You have to be patient, you have to be consistent, and you have to be willing to engage them. And I think that's the big piece there is when you talk about engagement, you have to be willing to be contrary. You have to be willing to say something that isn't necessarily pleasing to everybody. You have to say something that makes people think. And so, it's not always. I remember the first uh, one of the first videos that I had that went viral, I was talking about proving that branding works. And I said, go to a coffee shop, sit down and wait until somebody opens a Mac, wait until they open a laptop and tell me what your first reaction is. If they open a Mac product, an Apple product, I'll bet the first thing you think in your head is, oh, they're doing something creative. And the first person that walks in with a Dell or a Lenovo or an HP or whatever, you're thinking, oh, that guy's doing like he's working a spreadsheet, like whatever. And a bunch of people responded and were like, that's wrong. You don't get it. Da da da. That's like such old thinking. And then a bunch of other people were like, no, 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 you're wrong. Like he's totally right. And it just went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And all of a sudden, this was up over 1,000,000 people. And it was a really great lesson because it didn't matter that people disagreed with my opinion. This was just my opinion. What do I care? So, it was here's an opinion. You might not agree with it, but that's okay. And some of the conversations that came off from the disagreements were really fascinating. It was like learning from a little focus group. Why didn't you think so? Why did you disagree with me? Some people were like, well, you're just old and you don't get it. And I was like, oh, okay. And some people said, well, it's not the same way in Europe. And I was like, well, that's interesting. They're like, yeah, Macs in Europe are a flex. They're not just a choice. Here, it's like, well, I have an Apple. And I was like, oh, okay, something new I didn't think about. So it was really interesting to see how different people perceived what it was that I was talking about in these different ways. All of it learning, all of it positive, even the ones where people got really, really ticked off when Bud Light had its Mulvaney thing and it tanked, and everybody was. I went on and I said the reason that this happened is because they turned their back on their base. The people who drink Bud Light are Joe and Jane Americana, barbecue in the back, blue collar worker, like get the job done, come home, have a beer, and that doesn't jive with where they were trying to go with this DEI initiative. And I got hate mail for weeks and 2.5 million views. And I was like, okay. So, another 100,000 followers or whatever came along, and you've got to be okay with having opinions and sharing them and having people respond to them. As long as it's under the veil of, or the header of education and sharing and knowledge and learning, you've got nothing to fear from people who have a different opinion. I think it's the best thing out there. I really do.
And you're always in your lane with the one thing because you're coming from your brand experience and how you're helping. So you're observing from that thing. So we know the authenticity is there. You've given us sort of a playbook now of the patience level that it takes, the experiments you need to try along the way, the fact that you're not going to hit it out of the park with that first video you put out the first week or whatever it is. You've got a bit of
Yeah.
a runway that you've gone there. And then you've helped us think about different ways to maybe get a little bit more viral. But what I like about this approach is interesting is that you're on many sides of it. You're not just trying to you're not in one way putting something out. You're actually interacting with the comments and gaining insights from the comments that would actually feed back into your work in almost a circular way. I mean, how neat to see how many different ways you're using it. So we've got the win, the TikTok, we've got the strategy piece behind it with the one thing and what we're doing, the timeline. This is about a year and change when things get kind of moving. Was that about right for the total
Yeah,
time to
for
get
us, it was
popular?
closer to 6 months, I guess, like 4 to 6 months that we
Yeah,
really saw some traction.
which
And
probably is Yeah,
I
that's
was
probably pretty
amazed.
remarkable, I think, in TikTok years. So yeah,
I
that's pretty good. But there's
I
something
have been
then,
told
but
that.
that you're doing as well.
I have been told that, but I didn't think anything of it. I was asked by on a podcast one time. Somebody said, "Why did your stuff work?" And I was like, I just started laughing. I was like, I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea why it worked. And he said, I have never had anybody be so honest about it. He goes, everybody always tries to give me some rationale for it. I was like, I said, I wish that I could tell you I had a rationale for it. I just talked about the thing that I liked, and there it went. And so that was
Well, but
it.
there's something I'll just add in though. I mean, things other people don't know. So, and that's earned over decades. So there's something about that that's in there somewhere that does, if we started to pull apart some secret sauce, there's something in there. But I can hear the honest part that you're saying. But again, there's something about Bill and the way you're coming across that's obviously grabbing attention. There's some aspect there. And then also the content is working. So how great to see the playbook here. Strategy work plan, there's always people involved. How would you describe, well, you actually described it a little bit, your attitude at the beginning and then throughout this process. But at the beginning, you were like, nope, not going to do that. And then you kind of got into it. And then you had these moments of like kid in a candy store seeing the million, the views rack up. How would you describe it? Was it sort of an easy street kind of thing or peaks and valleys? How would you describe your attitude through this adventure?
So there's definitely plateaus that happen on the system that are inherent in the system. You'll hit certain numbers, and then all of a sudden, it won't let you grow for a while. It seems as though it's almost a little like, let's see if we can keep them going kind of a thing. So I hit 97 or 98,000, I forget what it was. And it was like I'd been growing, 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 growing. And then it just plateaued. And we were at 97.2 or 97.3 for months. And I was like, what happened? Like we were growing like a rocket ship. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And I started doing some research about what happens. And everybody that has a couple 100,000 followers are like, that's totally normal. Like the algorithm just wants you to post more often. Like, don't listen to it. Just keep doing your thing. And it is hard. It is such a dopamine cycle about, you posted and you got, and you posted and you got. And so you want to post. And then when you don't get, you're like, well, why am I not getting, right? So sure, there are some frustrations about the growth, but honestly, what I found that's really interesting, and I don't think a lot of people think about this, social media is not one platform, it's many. And so the beautiful thing is once you understand how engagement and attention trading and all that works, then you're like, oh, okay, well, let me jump over. TikTok's cool right now, so I'm going to let TikTok work itself out. And while that's happening, I mean, I'm still going to do my thing, but I don't want to lose my excitement about doing this because then my stuff will fall flat. So I'm going to run over to LinkedIn, or I'm going to run over to Facebook, or I'm going to run over to, I don't know, Substack or whatever. And this is a good opportunity to see what kind of things happen over there. So, it's really kind of fun to chew on the puzzle. It's harder to find the time for it, honestly, than it is to do the work. The work itself is actually quite enjoyable because you're looking at it and you're saying, "Oh, okay, well, let me look at other things that other people have spoken to that do well and dissect how would I approach that same subject." And so it's research and it's development of these scripts, and it's fascinating actually. It's like you could spend a whole lot more time than you should working on all of those things without any trouble.
Oh, fantastic. And it's funny because you've got experience. You know what it's like to buy a billboard campaign that succeeds. You know what it's like to buy television ads that succeed. Just off the back of the napkin for input versus results, how would you sort of grade the TikTok experience?
Oh, it's been amazing. I paid nothing. Millions of dollars
Nothing,
in.
and here you got
Nothing.
this experience, like, because like you said, you could have been staying where you were, traditional radio, doing the things or whatever
Yeah,
you were to get the
yeah.
word out, guerrilla marketing, you know what it takes to do that. And here you are finally invest in this area and you've got an angel on your shoulder who got you into it and made sure that that occurred. I love
Yeah.
it. It's a great thing. So we've got strategy, work plan, people. Operationally, you've explained that a little bit. There's something operationally about making this work. Is it funny to break it down, but is it like a couple videos a week? The early ones, you experiment, you learn.
So,
Operationally, what's
yeah,
it take to kind of get this to go?
You've got a couple things that we're kind of talking about simultaneously that we should break into pieces. One of them is optimizing and learning what works, and that's sort of your testing, right? Like I'm going to tell the joke this way on Monday night, and I will tell the joke that way on Tuesday night, and let's see who laughs more. So you've got that kind of thing that's happening. But then there's the efficiency play, which is how do I create content and when do I create content and under what circumstances and what's my flow and process? And I think for most people, you move from I'll just make it when I have time or when something strikes me to something that's much more intentional. I'm going to block this day, and over the course of this day, I'm going to write my newsletter, my long form, my short forms, and then I'm going to record some of them, and then I'm going to do editing on the next day, and then I'm going to put those into a distribution thing that'll let me just ding, 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 ding. And then when something pops up, like the big Omnicom deal that closed, still angry about this, DDB and foot cone belting, you have time to be able to say, oh, those are interesting topics that are right now. Oh, Cracker Barrel just changed its logo and everybody's popping off about it. I'd love to add my 2 cents to it. So it's a combination of sort of the evergreen, ongoing momentum thing that you've generated that keeps the flywheel moving, and then these little sparklers that pop up from time to time. And it's like, ooh, Jaguar just totally ditched 100 years of heritage. That's one to go talk about. And then everybody runs up and goes and talks about it. And people are like, comment, comment, opinion, opinion. And that's what really makes it fun. Social media is super easy if you look at it the right way. And that is that it's the world's largest cocktail party. And so the same rules apply that would apply at a cocktail party. If you talk about yourself and your stuff all night, you're going to be lonely most of the evening because you're not giving anybody any reason to stick around. But if instead you take yourself out of the equation and you just try to help people achieve something that they're already on their way to achieving, which is the recipe for any good cocktail conversation, then you will never be without someone visiting and talking with you. Your content will always be worthwhile.
Mini mentorship first. It sounds like a great success formula in terms of how this is work strategy, work plan, people, operations. Finally, there's results, quantitative and qualitative results. Quantitatively, you've mentioned some revenue, some opportunities to go around the world, clients getting out there. Any other quantitative highlights that you like to point out from this win?
Diversity of client type. I think when you start doing work globally, if you didn't really consider that as a market previously, what you realize is that, we're all just people, and it really does make the big blue ball small, right? Like all of a sudden, I'm talking with people down in New Zealand. This was one of my favorite ones, a guy that called me early on. He's a shoe repairman in New Zealand. Woke up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning for the time difference to have a call with me and told me about how he started this shoe repair company. And like, is he the typical guy that we would work with? No, but here I am having this delightful conversation with this guy. And then he called me a year later and he was like, I did this and this and it worked really well. And like, I did that and that. And, if you're ever down here, and I cannot tell you how many times where people have said this to me, if you're ever in insert country here, if you're ever in Dusseldorf, Germany, if you're ever in such and such New Zealand, if you're ever hanging out in Gold Coast, Australia, like I'll take you out to dinner. It just blew my mind. There was a time, there's one story that I tell about a tow truck that went viral early on. And it's a story that I've used in our businesses for years that I made up to try and help people understand the perspective difference between the business owner and the customer. And I got a phone call, or not a phone call, but a text message from this gentleman in Germany. And he said, hey, I really, really like your tow truck story. Do you mind if I translate it into German? And I was like, oh, no, I'd be thrilled. Like, go ahead. So he goes and he translates it into German. So meanwhile, that kind of kicked off a relationship between him and I, and we're like trading information, and he's working in marketing and I'm working in marketing and da-da-da-da-da. So a couple months go by and I get this discovery call coming in, and it's from another guy in Germany who's working on a sports drink. And I get on the phone and he starts speaking German really fast. And I was like, I don't speak German. Like, you're going to have to switch to English for me. And he jumps on and he goes, I was at a beer garden a month ago, and I was talking to this guy, And I was telling him about this business idea that I have, and he said, "You've got to talk to Bill Harper." And he pulls him up and he goes like this, and he goes, "I have a meeting with Bill Harper in a month." And I said, so I called the guy that did the TikTok video. I said, "Let me get this right. You're at a beer garden in Berlin talking to somebody else about a video that you saw of mine." And he's like, "Oh, I'm talking." I said, "Did that really happen?" He goes, "Yeah." And it just, like I said, it just shrank the world, right? Like, and both of them are like, "Hey, if you're ever here, come, let's go grab a beer. We'll go out to lunch," this kind of thing. And it's so unbelievably human and real and personal. And it's just been one of the most amazing things to walk away from this experience. Like, all the rest of it's nice, but the thing that's so surprising is just how open and warm and everything people have been about, "Hey, I just want to learn. If you're willing to give me some time, like, that would be amazing." And I do that now. My entire job now is just giving my time. Anybody that ever wants to talk, I give free time, 30-minute calls to anybody, and we don't talk about the agency at all. It's just, where are you with your business? What are you trying to achieve? Where are you trying to go? Here are some things that I see. If that is enough for you, great. If you want more help, you know where we are. That's it. That's the whole thing. It has been a remarkable transition for our business world from top to bottom.
Well, and how enjoyable. You've been through, you know what traditional is to run the agency, and this takes you into a different kind of realm and this isn't the stuff they teach you in school or when you were coming up in the business. They didn't teach you this kind of thing. Is that fair?
Yeah, very. And I will never,
Incredible.
ever, ever pitch the same way again. Like, at this point, it's become a joke. Years ago, we used to have a bet when we went into presentations that we would take the portfolio. This is how old I am. We actually had portfolio, and we would go in and we would set it down on the conference room. That's right. We actually did it in person. And we would go in and we would set it down in the middle of the conference room. And the game was, you don't show the work. That was the game. And that was the game that I put in place at our agency years ago. And I was like, here's the thing. If you have to open up the portfolio and show the work, you lose. I want to see if you can win without ever showing the work. Can we show that we understand the problem and them and how to fix things without ever having to get into the portfolio? And you'd be just amazed at how that opinion in and of itself has changed the way that we all think about people are actually listening and communicating and sharing things. And that is, there's no better compliment than somebody knocking on the door going, "The other agency is waiting and you guys have gone over." And you're like, "Oh, well, we were just chatting." Right? I've already won that one. Like that, I just walk out and I feel bad for the next agency because I know what they're going to do. They're going to walk in and be like, "On slide 12," and they can't compete on that. They just can't.
Incredible. Nancy McKay, who helps CEOs she's building inspiring leaders with as many CEOs as she can, talks about leading with generosity. And I can hear that theme underneath what you're talking about, and what a wonderful place to be in terms of what you're doing. Thank you for sharing this win. Thank you for lighting us all up with maybe a new chapter in your world, pre-TikTok-ish, and then post in terms of but more than that, pulling all those things together to be in a really neat time where you're getting asked out to lunch and going for a beer in Germany the next time you're there because of this. So it gets bigger than the work. It's bigger than all those things. If there's a lot of leaders that listen to this show. Maybe if you had a couple sentences just to leave with a leader that's pre-TikTok, like your brain or whatever, what would you say to somebody to be encouraging from a leadership perspective in terms of getting them this type of win or trying to lead them down that garden path?
I would tell them to slow down for a minute. The performance marketing thing has everybody jumping so fast, so much, so often that there's not any real thinking anymore. Everything is so reactionary, nothing is proactive. And I would say that if you can just slow down long enough to really notice the fact that no one is listening and talking and find a way to get that connection back, that it'll change your world. Like, they get so worried that they're not going to hit a number, that they're not going to get there, that they're not going to get there, that they've actually stopped doing the thing that will get them the success. The recipe for this is very, very simple. Your single greatest value is in helping somebody else's dream come true. Like, it does not get any simpler or more fundamental than that. If you want to have great value in somebody else's life, help them make their dream come true without asking anything of in return. It's just that easy, and they will lift you without you ever having to lift yourself. And I think that that is one of the biggest misses in our society today globally, is that we've lost the understanding that if you just give to somebody else, you will get back. And it might not be the person that you gave to. Maybe they then go and have a meeting with somebody else and go, you got to talk to this person. And I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. Somebody that I talked to, like the shoe repair guy that I was talking about earlier, has a friend who's, the senior VP at Quaker Oats, right? And you get this phone call and it's like, hi, I'm the senior VP at Quaker Oats. I got a buddy that runs this shoe company that I've known since I was a kid. He swears by you and says that I will be an idiot if I don't have a conversation with you. And you just sort of sit back and are like, okay, wow, that just happened. That's great. Let's do it.
Incredible. Listening, talking, and make people's dreams come true. Bill, it sounds like you're doing that on a daily basis. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Choose your one thing. Be authentic and tell stories that help your brand cut through the noise so that your company can scale. That is how Bill Harper and his team win every day. Thanks, Bill, for your inspiring win. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, then make sure to check out our upcoming episodes, which include how to turn a university into a highly ranked, world-class destination, winning with Mike Mann, CEO of Alberta Innovates. And if you're a leader who really wants to learn how the Executive Wins coaching session can help you to grow your confidence and inspire your team, then visit executivewins.com to learn how. You can also subscribe to the Executive Wins newsletter to stay up to date on the podcast, live events, education opportunities, and more. Visit executivewins.com/newsletter to sign up. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and share it with a fellow leader. And don't forget to check out our resources and links in the show notes. And keep listening to the Executive Wins podcast for more inspiring wins that will help you to grow yourself, your team, and your entire business. Thanks for listening to the Executive Wins podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe as we bring you more inspiring wins from outstanding leaders so you can grow your business.